tonight on a somber note with the death of American journalist James Foley. The New Hampshire native was captured 2 years ago in Syria while working for a Boston-based news outlet. A video posted online yesterday and claiming to show Foley's beheading has been authenticated by intelligence officials. In it, members of the militant group ISIS described Foley's death as retribution for U.S. airstrikes in Iraq. During a news conference earlier today, President Obama said he spoke with Foley's parents, offering his condolences, and he promised there would be justice for the brutal slaying.
The world is shaped by people like Jim Foley and the overwhelming majority of humanity who are appalled by those who killed him. The United States of America will continue to do what we must do to protect our people. We will be vigilant and we will be relentless. When people harm Americans anywhere, we do what's necessary to see that justice is done, and we act against ISIL, standing alongside others.
We've been covering Foley's story since his first capture in Libya 3 years ago. Through it all, we learned of his fervent belief in the need to expose atrocities around the world. James Foley was passionate about the importance of his work. The 40-year-old freelance war reporter covered conflicts and humanitarian crises in some of the most dangerous parts of the world.
The regime has bombed hospitals, homes, even people standing in line for bread.
The New Hampshire native was kidnapped twice while working for the Boston-based online news outlet Global Post. In 2011, Foley was held by forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. His mother and brother appeared on Greater Boston and said that despite the danger, he'd formed a strong attachment to that country.
He really has loved it. You know, particularly these last few weeks in Libya, I think he's really enjoyed being there, covering what the action and what's actually happening.
Foley's family seemed confident that he'd be released and that his capture wouldn't deter him from returning to combat zones.
What's your sense? Would he want to go back and continue reporting there?
Most likely.
Yes. Yeah.
Foley was freed after 44 days and did return to the front lines. He was kidnapped again 18 months later on Thanksgiving Day in 2012, this time in Syria. His family made their first public comments in January.
We're committed to do everything within our ability to secure his safe release, and this is our only priority.
A year later, Foley's parents had little more to go on about their son's whereabouts or well-being. They told Emily Rooney that the first kidnapping episode was easier on them than the second.
We did know who had him, and he had been sighted several times. We spoke to him once. We knew he was alive, Emily. This time, we've had no contact whatsoever.
Yesterday, the Foley's anguish gave way to their worst fears when a video posted online showed Islamic militants beheading James Foley. Yesterday, his mother posted a tribute message on Facebook, asking for privacy and paying tribute to her son, writing, "We have never been prouder of our son Jim. He gave his life trying to expose the world to the suffering of the Syrian people." My next guest knew James Foley personally and worked closely with him. Charlie Sennett is the co-founder of Global Post, founder of the Ground Truth Project, and a contributor to WGBH News. Charlie, good to see you, and I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
When did you find out about this horrific video?
Well, I mean, the horrific video really moved first as a Twitter feed with links, and we had gotten word that the threat was in the air, that a death threat had been put forward, and had kept that quiet in consultation with the family, and it was considered sort of wise to contain that. So we had some sense that there was potentially some horrific news coming. You know, our CEO, Phil Balboni, has been extraordinary in the work he's done to stay up to date on this. This is for 2 years. Every day he has worked on trying to secure the release of Jim Foley, and we have all done everything we can to find every bit of information, to talk to colleagues in the field, to work this story. Mm-hmm. So much of what we know has not been published because we've been so concerned about the fate of Jim and also the other captives who are being held there. So this is very sensitive information, but we did have some sense of it.
How long had that threat been hanging out there? Roughly months or weeks?
No, days. And we feared the worst, but we were still hoping for the best. And when the video first appeared, again, this horrific video that I hope your viewers will not watch. It is something that you will never forget if you see it, and it is something that I would never want anyone to watch unless they were absolutely forced to. We did watch it, we evaluated it very carefully, and we held on to a slim whisper of hope and a prayer that maybe it was fabricated, because it does cut out just before the execution. Mm-hmm. And that's why we were so careful about saying the purported execution, that ISIS is claiming to have executed Jim Foley. We just didn't want to have anything until we had confirmation. Now, sadly, tragically, federal government is confirming that they believe this is authentic. They believe that there was, in fact, the execution. The family has accepted that, and so we are all struggling with the worst nightmare. It's the darkest day we've ever had at Global Post.
Have you spoken with his parents or his brother?
I have. And the Foley family is extraordinary. As you can see on the tape, they are amazing. They are an amazing family full of faith. And I think their faith is what has carried them through this. And that is a faith in God, but it's also a faith in their son. And it's a faith in what Jim did. And a belief, a true belief, that the work he did as a journalist mattered and that he was out to make a difference. And I think they trust that he did make a difference. And that has somehow strengthened us at Global Post. To know that his family understood his work that well, I think maybe helps us to be a little bit strengthened by that ourselves. That strength gives off a little bit of energy and light, and I think knowing that they really believed in that is really helping all of us get through this, and we're amazed by this family's strength.
I remember interviewing you about James Foley's situation, I think back when he was first taken prisoner in Syria, and watching some of the videos he'd done reporting from the Syrian civil war. And I have to say, you've urged people watching tonight not to watch the video of his execution, but I would urge them to go back and look at the video he gathered for Global Post in Syria, because it really, for me, you can become inured to the horrors that are going on around the world when they're far away and when you hear about them day after day. And his work from Syria brought home for me, in a real raw, visceral way, just how horrific the scene or the situation in Syria was.
Adam, thank you for saying that. I would be so honored for people to go to Global Post and to really look at his work, to really read his work, to see his photography, to watch the video. The one I remember the most is in Afghanistan, where he's caught in an ambush. And if you remember, he does the wonderfully decent thing for a videographer, which is a soldier inside the armored Humvee is shot in the head. And the instinct as a photographer would be to keep locked on that person, but the right thing to do is not to ever record a soldier who's injured. That's a very respectful thing. He turned the camera down and he focused on the helmet. And in focusing on the helmet, he got the story, because the helmet held the bullet. The bullet did not enter the soldier's head. It was caught in the Kevlar mesh of the helmet. And then they all check him and they realize he's alive, there is no bullet, and they look at the helmet and they say, oh my God, the bullet's here. That's Foley. Foley was on the front line. Foley was a decent person who really cared about the people he was reporting on, whether that was the American military or the Syrian people or the Libyan people. He wanted to be on the front line because he believed that's where the intense tragedy and trauma and violence of war is captured. And he really wanted to bring home how dark it was and to shed a light on the people caught in war.
Let me ask you, is that unusual for people who do work in combat zones? I mean, can you maintain that sort of empathy when you are seeing terrible bloodshed day after day, or do you become inured to it you've worked as a foreign correspondent. So was it unusual for him to have that kind of empathy?
It's a really good question, and I think the answer would be that the good ones keep that empathy. The good ones understand that war is, this may sound strange, but war is boring, war is ridiculous, war is absurd. It is no way to solve a dispute. And if you've covered war, you know that. And I think you keep that edge. And as long as you keep that edge, I think you'll probably do a pretty good job reporting on that conflict. Foley kept that edge. He pushed it to the limits. He really went far out. There were times where it was very hard to be Jim's editor. There were things he did that I think would be courageous, of course, but at times I think we would have to say sometimes reckless.
Can you give me one brief example?
Yeah, I mean, I think going as far as he did out on the front lines in Libya, he wrote about that in our field guide. We have a field guide called Ground Truth. And in that field guide, we try to record essays of lessons learned from our correspondence. So we had Jim in his own words talking about when he was reckless, when he said he went too far. He didn't predict
impressive.
how the lines can shift, and he needs to be more
How quickly it
careful.
can happen.
So, I mean, Jim was aware of the dangers. Jim made sure he understood them. In the end of the day, Jim's work stands. Jim's work made a difference, and that his family believes in that makes us feel better, and we just keep them in our thoughts and prayers.
All right, Charlie Sennett, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Adam.
In 2011, just 2 weeks after he was released from captivity in Libya, James Foley spoke at his graduate school alma mater, Northwestern University. And he said the only thing he'd prayed for during his 44-day ordeal was a chance to call home.
I talked to my mom on the phone. Not only did I call her, they let me call her, but she picked up the phone. You know, I only know one number, my family's phone number. My mom actually picked it up. You know, it was like, that was a miracle, man. That was God right there, you know. And that was the day before Easter. My mom's very Catholic. That meant a lot. I mean, a lot of my friends from Marquette are very Catholic, and you know, these guys were. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what people were doing for me. No idea. You know, you're in a cell. It's like you're a submarine. You know, and you can only see out these bars. You know, and you're just trying to stay sane and through prayer and, you know, cigarettes basically. But you know, I said, Mom, can't you feel me praying to you that I'm okay? She said, Jim, can't you feel all your friends, all the people praying for you? You know, they're having prayer vigils at Marquette, you know. And I said, I guess I can. I guess I can feel that.